look at life through the context of the Bible, like the Bible explains a lot about life. How people who are led by the devil are led by anger, and people who are led by God are led by love. So when they talk to each other about this thing, it will prove itself because they'll get angry while you're loving. But look at this. Not only that aspect, but this aspect. I hope you made it this far, because here it is right here. When you talk to someone about, hey, God exists and you should get right with God. The key word, get right. Because to love God and to accept God and believe in God that He created you, it's the right way, right? And yeah, you could say that's my opinion, but that's a weak argument. It's the right way. If to do good obviously is the right way, and He is obviously right and the devil is wrong and evil, right? So when you talk to people, what are they trying to do? God is a principality God, right? That's why the Bible can stand the test of time, because it's about principles. Well, when you look at the principality of the situation of you, and because why? Because they stand for what's wrong. They are arguing for the sake of being wrong, and they want you to be wrong. You being with God, you are trying to get them to be right. And to be what? Righteous. To get right with God. To get right in your life. They are trying to make you look wrong. Look at the whole interaction. The whole interaction. Well, you're wrong because of this. Well, you don't know that because of this. Well, you know you're wrong, right? The whole interaction.
Yeah, okay. So Ben, we say rainbow today? We might. Once the sun is seen through the clouds there, you never know, we might.
You might, but when it's the middle of the day,
you might, but you're wrong. We're not going to see a rainbow today. He wants you to be wrong because He's on the side of wrong. That is proof. It's not the guy who's led by God saying, hey, you're wrong about this. You're wrong. Will we see a rainbow today? Fuck no, we're not going to see a rainbow today. You're wrong, buddy. It's sunny out. He says, now, well, maybe we might see propaganda. Who tells the same people pushing the science and evolution are the same people that say you need a flu vaccine every single year, even though if you don't get one, nothing changes. Now, I've never gotten a flu vaccine, but I recognize that that's mainstream media to tell you to you have an immune system. Even if the flu is evolving, it's called your immune system that gets better and better and better. So why do you need to rely on medicine? I've never did that. I forgot that was even a thing. I forgot that was even a propaganda tool I forgot that was even mainstream until he just mentioned it. But, mind explosion. It all makes sense. Shocker. The guy cites CNN stuff. Go get your vaccine every single year. That's short-term evolution. Why do you need a flu vaccine every single year? So it just shows all he has is mainstream beliefs and other people's opinions. And propaganda. That's all he has. And that's what he ties back to. You know what I mean? That's what he ties back to. It's the same thing with like the propaganda, social justice. We need this, we need that. Why? Because social justice. Why? Because they said it. Why do you need a flu vaccine? Because they said it. It's propaganda. He can't be questioned otherwise. He wants to move on. Just like how he did this whole 47 minutes. Every time he gets questioned on the fundamentals of why he thinks that way, it's this, and this. Okay, let's move on. So he looks at bones. He's already admitted earlier that forensics can get it wrong. So do you think archaeologists looking at bones that were covered in dirt for thousands of years, hundreds of years, do you think they could get it wrong on the age of how that old that person was when they died? You think it's possible to get that wrong? No, it's impossible to get that wrong. Do you see how he has to stop her dead in her tracks? She didn't even get the question out yet. She got one sentence out and he has to say, I have to stop you there to prove you wrong. I have to stop you. I can't let you get close to my assumptions because I'll be proven wrong. I have to say you're wrong right here. People were young when they died.
To be fair and show you exactly what this game looks like when you're playing it. So when you're above ground.
Can we take the elevator back up to get up? Because what we were, Jason and I got a chance to look through, and we love it.
People, I didn't even make it an hour into this 2-hour thing, and so far everything Bill Nye has said has been assumptions, opinions, and everything he's claimed has been wrong. So don't just listen to people spewing words. And you know, like, the whole time he was trying to change the subject. Why? He was trying to talk over Mr. Ham. Why? He was trying to walk away after a question was stated. Why? Because he just wants to give you words and information to change your mind. What is that called? It's called propaganda. Who uses science in Bill Nye's mainstream belief? Why is it called mainstream science? Why is it taught in schools? It is propaganda towards straying away from God. That's all it is. See for yourself. Question these things, and it'll show itself. Notice these. Take it from without yourself. Take your beliefs away, and look at the claim that there is a God. Look at the claim that there isn't a God. And look at how the interactions between the two people who believe those different things happen. And then look at God's word of how those interactions would happen. And it proves itself. I just gave you I don't know how long this video is going to be. I'm going to have to edit it down. And I just gave you an hour of direct, one after the other, non-cut. Yeah, it's going to be edited to save time, but if you go watch this video, you'll see that it's unedited. They're walking through the museum, and you can see Bill Nye's demeanor and his beliefs in live real time. You can see that it's right there for yourself. You just have to see it for yourself. If you hear it from other people, if you hear it from CNN, they're going to think Trump's bad. If you hear it from Bill Nye, you're going to think God doesn't exist and science is right. It's propaganda, people. It's impossible. The man who says the man who stands on his own beliefs, but also admits that he doesn't know everything, says that it's impossible of something that is completely proven today. Completely proven. And when you see archaeologists, they say, oh, this person was the Stone Age, this person was the Bronze Age, this person was in part of the Roman Empire, this person, blah, 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 blah. Some things you can obviously prove, like Roman clothes, obviously. But you got to see his point. His point being, if they lived in a cave, or if they built a house, or if they used this tool or used that tool, they lived in different ages. Look at what people do today. There are cities and there's also jungles. Did that not just blow your mind? I said jungles, but I meant tribes. There's also tribal people. There's tribal people. There's people. Did you see What Is a Woman? Did you see Matt Walsh go up to the tribal people living in huts? Are we living in two different time periods or two different cultures? You can see it for yourself today. When you see with your own eyes that people live different today, you can see that it doesn't have to be a different time. And this man says it's impossible that it's different cultures building different houses and acting different ways. This man says it's impossible. When I just showed you a possibility that it maybe, just maybe, humans were the exact same way they were a bunch of years ago. And there were cities and booming empires like Rome. At the same time, there were areas of the earth that were tribal people. Is that impossible? This video is such a gem and such an eye-opener. These interactions between non-believers and believers should be an eye-opener, people. Honestly. Look at the interactions between people. And then when you go to evangelism, you go to street preaching. That's why I have on my channel. I gotta really make different thumbnails so I can tell the difference between all my videos. But like, you'll see street evangelism, preaching God, and angry people will come up. They are led by the devil. They don't want to hear God's word. This man just said it's impossible that a certain type of people can't live in a cave, but also live in the same time frame as cities being there. And I'm paraphrasing, that's not what he said, but that's what he said. Even though today you can see it for yourself, even though today New York City exists, and I'm talking to you through nothing. I'm talking into a machine, and it goes into the air, and you get it on your machine, while there's people who don't even know a phone exists. I decided. What's your proof for that? His proof being that he decided that he knows more than God, and that it's all fake. The man who admits he doesn't know anything, and everything that he believes could be proven wrong, says that he knows that God doesn't exist, and it's all fake and humans made it up. Interesting.
Just like this.
But are you...
I'm scared.
Okay. Did Noah
See how
have
he went to
steel
go
brackets?
on?
Actually, in the...
Take his word for it. Let's go see. It's interesting because we didn't take his word for the trees and we went and see for ourselves, and it kind of proved that it was 4,000 years old. So that is very interesting. That's very interesting. I hate to do this to you, Bill Nye. I really do hate to do this to you. But a simple Google search showed that 5,000 years... Well, this is going off based off your guys' science. Your own science betrayed you, Bill. 5,000 years before Jesus even walked the earth, they were using iron. So do you think Noah had iron? How hard is it to make steel brackets? It's not that hard, buddy. I'm not going to be able to find the video, but I've already seen videos of people making it with egg carton. I've seen people making it, what was it? They made a forge out of wood. What was it? It was something crazy to where it's like, how is that? It's like paper cups or something. And they made a forge out of it. It's not that hard to make a forge. And then you take this mineral and you start throwing it in the fire, and then it cools off, and then you see, whoa, this is hard as steel. This is hard as iron. This is hard as rock. I'm going to use this as a tool. It's not that hard to see. And then you make molds. And then you make your little art. See how he's wrong in everything. He brought up the trees. He was wrong. He brought up iron. He was wrong. So is his assumptions about how old the ice is wrong? It's a pattern. I kind of think it might be wrong, right?
In other words, you're saying we're here, therefore natural
So here's
processes.
what I want you to think about. Here's where I believe Mr. Ham has trouble understanding nature.
He is trying to propagate these people. The way evolution gets people is that they're like, listen, the Earth is 1 billion years old, and there's a lot of time in 1 billion. So, it is very possible that we started as this and went to this, and slowly and slowly and slowly over billions of years went to that. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. A long time and then slowly doing it. Yeah, that makes sense. It's like, no, that's just propaganda. Because look, that's just his interpretation. Is that not from the bottom down? The top down would be exactly what you just said in two different instances. From the roof to the ground, and also from material to idea. You start with the material, then you become up with the idea. No, we go from the ground up. We start with an idea, nothing existing, just the way we want to look. It wants to look. Then we get the material, then we build it. We don't start building it, then get more material. No sense of the way did he just say that right. He's just propagating them. So just because you say that we build buildings backwards doesn't mean that the Earth is 4 billion years old and it slowly evolved over time. This is where it's very, very important. So far, he's given you wrong claims and propaganda, and then he goes, here's another thing. We get stronger and stronger because nature eats the little thing. That's more propaganda. You're saying we get better and better and stronger and stronger. Put a human, even the most fit human, out in the wild. Will he survive his whole life? Let alone long enough to produce offspring and flourish and then, thrive? And then all the while changing generation after generation over billions of years? Or is he going to perish? You think humans would perish in a world of lions and tigers and bears, oh my, and deadly snakes? Don't you think humans would pretty much die off over billions of years? That's propaganda. Don't you think humans would have died off? We're intelligent design. That's why we are intelligent. We are the creature that is intelligent. We were created this way. Just like God says we were created in his image, we were the intelligent creature. We are human. We're not animals that changed into human and now we're smart and can't survive. What sense does that make? Does a cat still know its basic instincts? Does it still chase that mouse toy? Yeah, we would have basic instincts on how to survive. How come we put an average person in the wild and they die in 3 days because they can't find water? Or we put a fit, and people still die. People still get hurt and die. Because we are not that being fit to survive. We did not evolve to survive, and now we're in cities and we're just better. Haha, we're better than all you. Haha, and now we're lazy and we can't do it anymore. No. What sense does that make? So you're making up science to ignore obvious science. We wouldn't lose our basic instincts, bro. We would not lose our basic instinct to survive. Let alone, people who know this for a living. They go out there and try it, and sometimes they die. And oh yeah, about the guy, the young man, when I said it was a good point that he brought up, you think you know everything right now. You don't think you're going to get proven wrong in the future and our technology is going to be outdated and such. And Bill and I agreed with him. So we all recognize that we don't know everything right now. So who's to say what us people are saying isn't from a higher degree and we're not speaking down to a lower degree? Do you really think that is your first belief? Before I got into this, I was thinking there was no God. Foolishly. That is the first belief. And it's the same thing in a video game. Put it in that perspective. Look, are your eyes starting to open? In a video game, do you start out as a boss or do you start out as a noob and you got to work your way up? It's the same thing with idolatry. So you start out believing there's no God and then you start believing. Because you leveled up. Bill and I, now it all makes sense. In hindsight, it's 2020. I always wondered why Bill and I wore a bow tie and he did the kid show and he was goofy, and it was because he's a kid mentality, believing there's no God and rocket science and all this different stuff in space. He's a kid, he's a little kid. That's why he's kiddish, and that's why he appeals to kids, and that's why he was used as propaganda to kids. It's all making sense now. This is all straight off the top of my dome. There's a process to prove it, but we can't prove it. Does that make sense to you people? There's a process to prove it. Obviously it makes sense what he's saying. We can't prove it right now in this instance, but over a series of experiments, we're going to be able to prove it. What if you don't? And some people say it's going to take 1,500 years. The whole thing is you just assume. You assume that this is the case, and you try to prove it to be true. Instead of seeing it or seeing the proof and then tying it to the evidence. The proof being you can see it with your own eyes, and then the evidence being the Word of God. How crazy is that though? I can prove it to you. I can't prove it right now.
That's what's so exciting.
Prove that we're just... Bill, I want to
See how you went to walk away?
It's extraordinary.
I can
but
prove
not
it to you.
Okay.
Just
So
to
we
walk
have
away.
a process
Don't question
by
me,
which
but I
we
can
can
prove
prove
it.
that. That's what's so exciting.
Prove that we're just... Bill, I want you to do that for all these young people. Prove that we're descendants from Martians.
I can't prove that right now.
I can't. He can't do it. He can't prove it.
I say all sorts of interesting things, and I challenge him, and we have this back and forward. We go head to head. If we hear Bill
So this is just part one. I've only made it 45 minutes to the hour and 57 minute, and my YouTube video is gonna be an hour long because I went on talking spiel to get it through people's heads. So make sure you leave a like and subscribe. My channel is like basically brand new. Like I have 28 subscribers. I've been on YouTube forever, but now I'm actually chasing my passion and my calling. So leave a like and subscribe to help get the message out there. This stuff is obvious. It's not me, it's God. It's God trying to wake everybody up before the last days. It's not me.
It was cordial, but it was lively. I was able to present the gospel to him, but we want you to see the uncut video where I walked through the ark with Bill Nye. And this happened on July 8th, the day after the Ark Encounter was opened to the general public. Enjoy this 2-hour walkthrough.
To start down here, just walk up onto the first deck and just walk up to the third deck.
Okay.
So then you get to see all the exhibits and all the way up and just give you...
One by one going up?
Yep.
Okay. Would it be okay if we started on the third and went down to the first?
Well, we could do, but it's sort of in order if you go 1, 2, 3.
Okay. So up to Bill. You want to do 1, 2, 3 or 3, 2, 1?
And the thing is, I think we're going to do a sit down afterwards
Where is the sit down Bill?
in the third deck.
Okay. I'm honestly fine with anything. But
Okay.
we really want to do the
Yeah,
third.
you guys scoped it out.
Oh, you want to fix it? Go for it.
Do you mind if we go to the third first?
Well, we could do. It's just we've got to come down and come all the way back up. That's all. It's just.
Can we take the elevator back up to get up to the third after bit? Because we were, Jason and I got a chance to look through, and we loved the top floor exhibits the most. And there's even an exhibit with Bill. So we thought that we could start up there. At least. Is that all right?
So you want to go 3, 2, 1?
That's okay.
Okay.
Man, this lighting is so insane.
But we want this in.
Did you get that on sound? I want to record a lightning effect for you.
While we're at it, I'm going to change batteries if we have the time. So let me take your receiver here.
Well, we need to go up in the elevator.
Here, I got.
So can you go get the elevator ready?
Yeah, that's fine.
We only have one elevator working right now. The big freight elevator's still not connected up.
Okay.
Well, that was a nice cracker. Oh, I can see the light. I looked on the radar. Once this goes through, there's nothing behind it. That was especially for you, Bill.
No, that was me. I get behind on my email sometimes.
I'm way behind this week in my emails.
Okay, we're ready.
All right.
Oh, we're ready, but I'm not sure he is. They are.
So we'll take the elevator to the third and then
Yeah,
work our way
okay.
back.
So, Ben, if you want to look after getting the elevator for us.
So we're really
Ready to
rolling.
go? Go on the-
So, Mr. Ham, are these chines for stability?
Yeah. It's built with 3 keels because we had an architect who's involved
There's
in
a
marine
concrete
engineering.
shell, right?
No, they're concrete piers. They go down to
I know, but
actually
there's
solid
a-
rock.
There's a shell above this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, in other words, Mr. Ham, this ship is not seaworthy, is it? What do you,
Oh, we didn't
what do you
build.
say to kids? Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't build it to float because there's never going to be another global flood. So
How do you know that?
It was designed as a ship, but built as a building. So how do I know that? Well, on the basis of the Bible. I know I believe the Bible is God's word, and I know you don't, but on the basis of the Bible, after the flood, God said there'll never be another global flood again. Been lots of local floods, but not a global
When
flood.
did he, where does this say that?
Genesis chapter 10. Oh, sorry, Genesis chapter 9. God said there's a covenant between him and man and him and the animals, and the rainbow was the sign of that covenant, that there would never be another flood as the one that he sent.
So, rainbows, what makes a rainbow? Would there be rainbows without that covenant?
Oh, yeah, I think rainbow, it doesn't say that that's when God made the rainbow. It just says that the rainbow was to be a sign. In other words, anytime you see a rainbow, it's to be a reminder. In other words, a reminder that there'll never be another global flood. So yeah, a rainbow would exist when you have
Well,
the right amount of
will we
light.
see a rainbow today?
Will we see a rainbow today? We might.
A free legendary champion is waiting for you. Galliana, the debuff queen. Add her to your team, and she'll keep you fighting till the very end.
Once the sun is seen through the clouds there, you never know, we might.
You might, but when it's the middle of the day, the sun's high, and you seldom get that directed angle to create a rainbow. Once in a while. Careful, careful. Yeah. So what goes on here in the Ice Age?
Well, one of the things that we're talking about is the Ice Age was generated by the flood. In other words, you know, those who believe in evolution actually believe
I'm
in
sorry,
Ice
so
Ages.
your claim is that there was an Ice Age 4,000 years ago?
The Ice Age was back towards the flood.
What do you
yeah.
base that on?
What do we base that on? Well, as you know,
Here we have evidence for this.
Yeah.
What's the evidence for this?
no, we don't have evidence for that. That's an interpretation. You can't find ice that has labels on it.
Yes, you can.
Labels?
Absolutely.
That say, I'm 300,000
Yes.
years old? Oh,
Yes, sir, you're a
I've
science
never-
educator.
I've never seen one of those. Where do you see one of
You
those?
count neutrons and oxygen atoms. That's how it's done.
Yeah, but
It's as though it has a label on it. Very much.
But it doesn't say I'm 300,000 years old.
Not in English, no.
No, you have to interpret it on the basis of certain assumptions, right? You have
Or certain
assumptions?
discoveries.
No, assumptions. I mean,
Let's go with discoveries.
no, let's
go
go.
ahead.
let's
Go ahead. How do you get
let's-
an ice age
let's-
4,000 years ago?
Let's go with assumptions, because whenever you're interpreting the past, you have to have certain basic assumptions about elements that were there and rates of change and all that sort of thing.
So you're saying, is this your observational science and historical science?
Oh, absolutely.
So what
It's
are
not,
you,
it's
so go
not
ahead.
my observational science,
So-
historical science.
So explain this. There, in my opinion, in my view, there's no evidence for an ice age 4,000 years ago.
Let me ask you a
Pyramids
question.
full-
Did you want to walk through the Ark, or did you just want to come up here and attack our beliefs?
Well,
Because I did
Whichever
promise,
you like, sir.
I did promise you a walk through the Ark.
Okay.
And I know you wanted to head to the third floor because our teaching exhibits are here. But let me explain here. Actually, creationists have a mechanism for an ice age. Because after the flood, you got warm water, cool land, a lot of evaporation. You're going to have a mechanism for an ice age. What's your mechanism for ice ages? Because you would believe in ice ages, right? I mean, different ice ages over hundreds of thousands of years.
the eccentricity of the Earth's orbit?
Yeah, but I mean, you know, you're looking at that. You're looking at the Earth's orbits now, but what's your mechanisms for the different
Well,
ice
we
ages?
look at what the Earth was doing 300,000 years ago.
But you can't look at that. You can only see the Earth now.
Yeah, but you can see evidence of the past.
Well,
So-
we see evidence in the present
So where
of
do you
past
draw the line?
processes.
This is what everybody wonders about your
Okay.
worldview.
Okay.
Where do you draw the line between what you can observe directly and what you can infer?
Well, I know that.
If you come into a room and a window's open, do you presume that no one opened it because you weren't there to watch them open it?
Well, the thing
If you
is,
see ice in a glass, do you presume it got there in the last few seconds because you weren't there to see the freezer create it?
you know.
It's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary worldview. Go ahead, lead on.
Okay, so you don't want answers.
Sure, go ahead.
You just want to make statements without
Go
answers.
ahead.
You know, come on, we can have a friendly talk about these
Go
things.
ahead.
You know, you come up here in attack mode, Bill. Come on, let's not attack each other.
Go ahead.
Let's just be friendly. And I know you have a different worldview to me. And you know, when it comes to something like ice cube in a cup, I mean, we live in the present world and we've experienced those things. We've experienced ice cubes and we have cups, and that's something that's within our life's experiences, and it's very easy to infer that somebody put that ice in that cup. But when it comes to talking about the past when we weren't there and things we didn't experience, that's very different. And that's where we need to have an understanding of the difference between interpretation and what you actually observe in the present and have had experience with.
So let's talk about this again. What makes you think this was 4,000 years ago?
What makes us think that that was 4,000 years ago? Well, first of all, we take the chronology in the Bible, and that chronology in the Bible is that Noah's flood was about 4,300 years ago. And so that gives us a date of at the end of the flood. Then we look at the evidence that we have today of the fact that we know that there was ice in the past. We know there were glaciers in the past that advanced because we see the evidence in the present. You can actually see
What
it.
evidence do we see?
Oh, glacially carved valleys. We can.
But you weren't there to see those glaciers
No,
carve
that's
themselves.
true. That's true. We weren't.
You're okay with that, but you're not okay
Yeah,
with
but
neutrons.
the difference with that is we can actually see what glaciers do. We've actually experienced what glaciers do, and we know the evidence that glaciers leave, and evidence of moraines, and evidence of the way they erode.
What
things.
about sedimentation rates? What about neutrons in the water? What about-
Sedimentation rates? It all depends on circumstances. I mean, if you weren't there, I mean, something could be deposited very quickly that you look at today and think was deposited slowly. I mean, if you didn't see it happen.
That's where we disagree.
No,
If you didn't see it happen, means it didn't happen. I just
No,
don't
no,
agree.
I'm not. No,
So
you're
I
implying
don't-
something that's not
I'm
true.
open-minded, but I don't see any evidence for an ice age 4,000 years ago. There are
Okay,
pyramids older than
you've got a lot of young
4,000 years
people
ago.
here. How would you convince them that there were ice
It's
ages
actually,
over hundreds
Mr.
of
Ham,
thousands
that's my
of years?
biggest concern. Is the young
I
people.
tell you my biggest concern, that you're teaching generations of these young people that they're just animals, that they came about by natural processes. Aren't you teaching that humans are animals? Are we animals?
Yeah. We're
just
mammals,
animals?
breathe air.
Okay.
Isn't that good?
So all life is related,
Of course,
right?
there's a few of us
from your
seem like lizards.
From your perspective, all life is related?
Certainly.
Even plants? We're related to plants?
It's one of the fundamental discoveries in all of life
Okay,
science.
so we're related to plants?
Yes.
So we're related to a banana?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted
What makes you think we're not related to bananas? What evidence do you have that the DNA in bananas, the DNA in E. coli, the DNA in ancient cave bears, what evidence do you have that we're not related to them? Besides, just so we're clear.
Okay. Well,
As
do you,
soon
ha-
as you-
do you
go
have
ahead,
any?
go
Do you
ahead.
have any evidence that, well, as you know, all life is basically life is built on DNA, and DNA is an information system and a language system. So, do you have any evidence that matter produces a language system and matter produces information? I mean, there are billions, trillions of bits of information in living systems. Can you testify to how information arose by natural processes?
Here we are.
That's it? That's your evidence?
Well, we'll start with the evidence and work backwards. What I think you're asking is the why.
Actually, you're not starting with evidence. You don't believe in God, right?
That aside, here's where we
Okay,
disagree.
okay. Well, let me ask you this.
No,
Do
hold on
you
a second.
believe life came about by natural processes?
Yes.
Okay, so you've got that belief. So you don't start with evidence, you start with a belief.
No, I claim I started with evidence to reach that belief.
Oh no, but you
Dude, let's look at some more of the exhibit.
you start with a belief in naturalism.
Well, you start with the belief in what?
Oh yeah,
what's your belief? What is your belief start
See,
with?
I admit my belief. My belief is that God's word is true,
So-
and that the history in God's word is true. And see, what we're talking about here, and this is the whole point that we're helping people understand. We all live in the present. We all have the same present evidence, but depending on your assumptions and how you approach your worldview, depends on how you interpret evidence in relation to the past. Because you believe everything happened by natural process, you don't believe the history in the Bible, right? In Genesis.
Well, not literally.
No, I do. And
obviously.
see that's a big difference. So all I want you to do is admit that you have certain beliefs you start with.
My beliefs are based on evidence. I think your
Not your belief.
beliefs are
How
based
can you prove life arose by natural processes? How do you prove that?
We haven't proven it.
Well, then that's a belief.
Yes, but the explanation
so
that
you
you
start
provide is completely unreasonable to me. And unacceptable, and we reject it in science.
Unreasonable by whom?
Well, as soon as you go back in time,
You can't go back in time. We live in the present.
in your worldview, as soon as you produce a miracle, then you're not doing science.
Well, I'm
Tell
not,
us on the
I'm
outside.
not producing a miracle.
There's no
What-
such thing.
What do you mean by science?
So this is the most troubling thing you do, Mr. Ham. Climate change is the most serious problem facing humankind. And so by trying to convince young people that climate change is not real is very serious, because they're going to have to grow up and deal with it.
Actually, we're saying
The
climate
Little
change
Ice
is
Age
real.
was a local phenomenon.
Bill, we're saying climate change is real.
So is it serious?
Climate change? What you have to do then is say, why have they changed? climates change all the time.
Let me rephrase it for you. Human-caused climate change is very serious.
Well, there's a lot of debate about
this is
that.
the worst thing you
There's a lot of scientists who would disagree with that. In fact,
There's
we have
very, very
PhD
few.
scientists on our staff that would disagree with that. We have other PhD scientists.
Your scientists and your staff, as respectful as I can be, are incompetent. They're not good scientists.
You mean Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson, who has a PhD from Harvard University? He's incompetent? Dr.
From what I've seen on television, he is.
Watch this video.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, it's here? Oh, here we are.
Tell me, Dr. Georgia Purdom, who has a PhD in molecular genetics from Ohio State, she's incompetent?
Certainly seems to be.
Well, this is about, in the debate, you talked about it takes a long time for ice to be laid down, and this is an example where it doesn't take that long at all.
No, you're confusing ice with snow.
Antarctica.
Oh, yeah, I see.
We're using what we do.
Confused ice with snow.
We're using what we do in the,
So
what happens in the present.
everybody here, if you visit this place in Greenland, where 80 meters of to 260 feet of snow accumulated, you will find the number of layers from 1942 to today. You will find the same number of layers. Okay, it won't be up to me. I didn't put the layers there. The process, which I think you don't fully accept, is as the layers get thicker and thicker, they crush down through a remarkable process called regelation. And you've done this yourselves when you make a snowball. You break the tines of the snowflakes, they release a little bit of heat, melt the water, and it gets harder and harder. And if you do it hard enough, long enough, the ice actually becomes clear. This is glacial ice. It absorbs red light and it looks blue. It's beautiful. So this is completely consistent with mainstream science. That the snow falls a lot here in this part of Greenland is not the same thing as counting the age of the Earth or the records of ice ages, the records of when unleaded gas was introduced by looking at the layers of snow. Mr. Ham, with respect, you completely misunderstand the point that you're trying to make.
No, Bill, I think you misunderstand the point. The point is, we actually know how long those layers took to be laid down. When you go and look at the layers of ice, when you bring up ice cores, you didn't see them being laid down. You weren't there at the beginning, and you make assumptions about the layers.
So you believe that there was a supernatural process that created the many layers that we observe?
Of course we don't.
670,000.
No,
But is that right? You
No.
believe that there was a supernatural process that created
Absolutely.
670,000 layers?
Absolutely not.
How did it happen?
They were laid down catastrophically. They were laid down quickly. They didn't
So
take.
there were-
In other words, when you make interpretations about each layer and how long it took to be laid down, that's your interpretation. And what we're saying is you can have multiple layers very, very quickly.
So
And we've seen
sounds
that in
like
the present. We've
sounds
seen
like
that in the
you're
present.
no. It sounds like you're cherry picking data.
No, one of cherry picking. That's just a good example. It's a
So
great example.
your claim is that there were 670,000 layers of snow laid down in, for example, Antarctica or Greenland. Or
Hey, look, you can get multiple layers in a day.
How many can you get in a
You
day?
can get multiple layers in a day, correct? I mean,
No.
you see.
No,
Yes,
no,
you
not
can.
like no, sir. No.
You can
I
observe
challenge you on that.
You can observe that. Let me ask a question. All these young people here, you say if they're taught creation, it'll undermine technology, destroy technology, it'll destroy their science. Is that correct?
When you say destroy, you mean make Facebook not work? What do you mean?
Well, I'm asking you what you mean when you were at the debate and you said when you teach young people, children, you're going to have a major. When you teach young people, teach children creation, you're going to have a major problem in regard to technology and
In the
advances
future.
in technology.
Who wants to be an astronaut? Anybody?
And we find
Right on. Do you know we got a spacecraft in orbit around Jupiter
1,000 layers.
on July 4th?
How could it be?
So I was at Cape Canaveral, you guys, on August 5th, 2011. Here, let's move away from the sound. On August 5th, 2011, I was at Cape Canaveral. We launched a rocket that went out beyond the orbit of Mars, fell back toward the sun, went around the Earth, where it took an infinitesimal amount of energy from the Earth's orbit, then went out to Jupiter and approached Jupiter from the north.
That's great observational
On Monday,
science.
that spacecraft went in orbit around Jupiter. That's rocket science, everybody.
Yeah, and
That is
scientists, engineers in the present use their 5 senses to be able to develop that technology. What's that got to do with origins?
The same process enables us to count layers of snow.
No, it doesn't,
Antarctica.
because you're experimenting with the rockets in the present, the fuel, the structure of the rocket, the engineering. When it comes to looking at the layers that are already there, you weren't there to see them being laid down. That's the point.
Yeah, so how do you feel about forensics, Mr. Ham? How do you feel about the process that detectives use to determine what happened at a crime scene?
Oh, yeah.
If you weren't there and you didn't see how a guy got killed.
And they have to interpret the evidence, and sometimes they get it wrong, actually. And those things are much closer in the present than when you're talking about way in the past, because it might have been a murder that happened yesterday, and so yeah, you can go in and look at the evidence.
So you're saying,
but scientists have been known, forensic scientists have put people in jail who've been innocent, correct?
I suppose, yeah.
Because they made the wrong interpretation.
But
because
they've
they didn't
also
have all the
arrested
evidence.
a lot of people based on very good science.
Yeah, based on science in the present. In other words, you can test for blood and say, this is blood.
So this is
You
where
can
we
test-
disagree. Everybody, this is where we disagree. This is where Mr. Ham and I disagree on the nature of evidence.
Oh no, the evidence is all the same. It's not
So
the nature of
when
evidence.
we find people on the outside
It's the nature of
find
interpretation,
layers of
Bill.
snow that are this thick because they're crushed down by 670,000 years of snow, we interpret it as real. The snow actually fell 670,000 years ago. The number of neutrons.
Where's the
this
label
is how-
saying it's 670,000?
The neutrons.
I don't want you leading these young people astray.
Okay,
Where's
so
the label saying it was 670,000
neutrons.
years?
And
Where-
in the
where-
layers themselves.
How would they see 670,000
You
years? How
would
do
count
they
the
see?
layers. You would go to the Ice Core Lab
Okay.
in Golden, Colorado. We've been there. And
as
you look at a block of ice that's been drilled out of the ice in
and you
Greenland.
count the layers, and what do you do with
count the
each
layers.
layer? How do you get the 670?
That's how many thousands of layers there are in certain of the cores.
But what are you assuming about the layers? Was there one a year, or what
Yes,
are you assuming?
sure.
But how do you know? But
How do we know that? By careful measurement.
that's the very point of the example that
No,
we have
by
here.
careful
is that,
measurement.
no, you can see many
Furthermore,
layers.
you can do
You know what?
this.
Some of these people are from states where they get massive snow and ice storms, and I've actually seen the layers in the snow. Have you seen
We're not
the layers
talking
in
about the same thing.
Yeah,
Have you seen them crushed down to where they're clear?
When it rains on top of the snow, they do.
Yeah, but in Antarctica, it
and
seldom
multiple
rains.
layers and multiple layers form.
So you guys, I want you to evaluate my claim that when there's 670,000 layers in a core of ice, there are 670,000 years associated with that.
I know,
Compare that
you got to
with
tell them
his
where you
claim.
get the years from. Where do you get the
Oh
years
no,
from?
I say they'll evaluate it for themselves. You don't have to take my word for it.
Okay,
You're not taking the
have you
word.
seen layers for multiple layers?
Yeah. I would like to know your opinion though. Like what are the years? Like what do you think they are? Is it every layer is one
So
year?
when you guys see these particular pieces of ice I'm talking about, and there's a building in Golden, Colorado, where we keep them. It's minus 36 Celsius. Everybody who works there puts on a big hood, big parka to go inside and work. You can see where the snow is crushed down. The tines of snowflakes break, release a tiny bit of heat, which makes it melt ever so slightly. And they turn this distinctive clear color. You can look at when unleaded gas was in use and when leaded gas was in use. You can see the chemicals in the snow. You can infer the temperature of the sea surface by the number of neutrons in the water. You evaluate my way of looking at it and compare it with his. My way of looking at it is from the outside.
Here's what I want to do for the young people. I actually want to teach them how to think correctly. And that is, you have these layers in the present, and you weren't there to see them being laid down. You don't know how many storms there were. You don't know how many
But how would you
times there
figure
were-
out how many storms there were?
Well, that's the point. That's it.
Well, there's
Bill,
a way
that's
to do
exactly-
it.
That's exactly, no.
It's his way, which I understand comes from a scripture, right?
No.
Don't you think that there have been such like fluctuating climates and stuff that it's hard to know?
But we
exactly
infer
how
that
much
also.
it
We
is?
figure that out also. That's
So kind
our
of is
business.
It's everyone's guess then? Kind of everyone has a separate
I
guess?
wouldn't use the word guess. Everybody understands
how
that on the
about-
outside,
how about-
97% at least of the world's scientists are very concerned about climate change. On the outside.
No, you just
Caused by humans.
Hey, Bill, you just swapped subjects. Let's get
No,
back
it's
to
of a piece.
No,
that
let's get-
we discovered ancient climates and what it used to be like by looking at these same cores of ice, these same pieces of ice.
But are you really discovering ancient climates, or are you just discovering what's there in the present and you're interpreting as ancient climates? It could have been different conditions in the 1 year.
Very, very skeptical. There's absolutely no way, in my view, that you could have that many conditions in 1 year and nobody noticed. Mr. Ham, there are trees older than you believe the Earth is.
How do you know that?
Mr. Ham, because we count tree rings. Mr.
wait,
Ham,
wait,
there are
wait.
pyramids, there are
Wait a minute,
human-built
wait a minute.
structures older than the
let's-
stuff you
let's
are
get back-
showing
Let's
here.
get back to the tree rings. We want these people
Just-
to understand.
So what we all wonder about you.
No, let's get back to the tree rings.
Let's talk about
Okay,
tree
let's get
rings.
back to tree rings. So when you're counting those rings, you assume one growth period a year?
Most of the time.
How do you know that?
We've looked at
Because-
a lot of trees.
Yeah, and we've actually seen trees that can
Millions
have multiple.
of trees.
We've actually seen trees that can have multiple growth rings. It
Okay, have you seen
it de-
trees
It
that
depends
have
on
thousands of tree rings?
Oh yes, absolutely. And you when you put
No,
them.
I mean really.
And we, of course, we've actually got.
So when you get out
sections through
there, when you
trees
get
with
out
tree
in the
rings.
world, compare his claim to my claim. My claim is that you can count the years from tree rings. You can infer
let me ask
how
you.
many plants were
Okay,
near
in front of all
pollen
these
by
young
the
people, let me
pollen.
ask you this: do you know?
Okay, let's move on.
No. Do you know 100% for sure that it was one ring a year? Do you know 100%
You're
for sure?
cherry picking a datum.
do
you
you
can
know-
tell the difference between rings.
No.
Sometimes there's a wide ring, sometimes there's a narrow
There
ring.
can be, and you have to
And
put
scientists who study
you have to put
this
trees
take that into
together, and
account.
you have to look at those.
You're working
and
real
you
hard,
assume where
Mr.
the
Ham.
rings overlap.
You're working very hard. Carry on. Lead on.
No.
Yes, sir.
You took all this time to study all this, and you don't believe, right, in God.
I didn't say that. I do not believe the Earth is 6,000 years old.
Okay.
That's a very different thing.
But you do believe.
In God?
I just don't want to discuss that. I think
Okay.
it's distracting.
But you do believe.
We're talking
life-
about the claim that there was a worldwide flood and all the plants in the world were under salt water for a full year.
Well, hang on.
That there's a claim that somehow pyramids older than 6,000 years exist and were not washed away. That somehow there are 670,000 layers of ice from 670,000 years of snowfall and nobody noticed.
Okay, you just
Is
made.
the only
You
thing
just
you go
made
by
those.
the dating of today? Because if that's
We go by all of it, the pollen grains, the tree rings, the ice layers.
The tree
and
ring-
the
the
other
tree rings are
fundamental
like
thing,
ice
everybody,
layers.
we have very accurate records of how much carbon dioxide people have put in the air.
Hey, you know what's interesting?
carbon dating is
I
completely
promised
accurate,
Bill
though?
to
So
give him a
don't-
walk through the
don't
ark, and he came up
confuse
here and
or
just
keep
tried to
straight.
attack me.
Keep straight,
And
both
attack what we're doing
carbon
here.
dating, which goes back a few hundred and sometimes 1,000 or so years, with radioactive dating,
What's
which
that?
goes back billions of years.
So tree
go
rings.
ahead, attack.
Tree rings. You don't know it was one ring a year.
Sometimes it's a little different.
Okay, but you agree that it could be more than one ring a year because you could have more than one growth period a year. That's
That I don't know. I'm not
oh
an
yeah,
expert
you
on
can.
that. Okay, I'll
We've
take
seen
your
that.
word for it.
I'll
If
finish
climates,
my thing
if,
right here, then I'll get out of your face.
I like it. Bring it on.
Well, no, you spent all this time, your adult life, researching all this and everything.
Yeah.
So why don't you just take the time, look at the creation that's here?
I have taken the
and,
time.
And God created that. He created man in his own image.
That could be, but I'm skeptical.
You're skeptical. Just take the time and have faith and spend the rest of your
Well,
life
see, here's the problem.
wondering about that.
No, here's the problem, you guys. As soon as you go back in time, as soon as you have any process of reasoning that requires a miracle, then it's not science. Then you've departed from something.
Your belief doesn't require your belief doesn't require any miracles.
No miracle.
No miracles.
No.
you
so
think
everything
this
happened. No, everything
Well, the
happened by
word just
natural
happened.
processes.
The other big problem that we disagree on.
So everything happened by natural processes,
Yes,
right?
as far as we can tell.
So everything, the universe, all life happened
Well,
by
see, we
natural
don't know.
processes.
Here's another difference we have, I think.
Okay.
When I find out that there was a Big Bang, Edwin Hubble discovered the stars moving apart from each other in 1927 or so. I go, that's astonishing. That's amazing. I am part of this universe, and yet I have the ability to understand this little bit of it. That's amazing.
Mr. Knight.
And hang on, let me finish this one paragraph. So when I find out that I don't know what there was before the Big Bang or what it even means to ask the question, what was there before the Big Bang? I'm excited. That's fantastic. There's more to learn. There's another amazing discovery to be made.
Do you think you have a
Whereas
soul?
other people are very troubled by that.
Do you think you have a soul?
Okay, let's walk down here.
Can I just ask?
Let's just walk down.
I can't tell. I don't know.
What if you miss it all?
I don't think I will. So I don't think I. I
Can I
think.
just say speculation? Pure
Please,
speculation.
yeah.
What would the evidence look like if there was a full Earth flood?
I don't know.
Hey,
I've never seen it.
hey,
I've
Bill.
never seen anything like it.
We can speculate.
Bill, can I?
I've never seen any
Can I
evidence
ask
at all
you-
to suggest.
Can I ask you one question? Okay, you talk a lot, and that's great. But can I ask you one question that I really want to understand? If you promise you'll answer it.
Well, but I'm not going to necessarily give you an answer you want, yes or no, to tree rings and years
I'm
and
not
stuff.
talking that. In your worldview, when you die, what happens to you?
You're done.
You're done. So
And
why?
if that turns out not to be true, that would be very exciting.
Okay, but if you say you're done, so you won't even know you're ever here.
Apparently not.
So then, why do you care what we're doing here? Why do you care about climate change? Why do you ultimately? Because ultimately, when all these people die, they're done, and nothing has any ultimate purpose. So why does it matter? Why does it matter ultimately?
So let's be clear.
Okay.
What we do is make more people. What organisms do is reproduce.
But still, when they die, they're done. So why does it
So
matter?
my claim-
Why does it matter ultimately?
My claim is that not only your size and shape, number of fingers, eye color, and so on, is a result of the main idea in all of biology, evolution. Not only is evolution the main idea in biology, but what you feel is also a result of evolution.
But why does that matter if you're done when you die? I mean, why does it all matter? Everyone's done. They won't even know they're here. Why?
You're
does this-
asking fundamental existential questions. This is great, Mr. Ham.
But why?
The idea is to pass your genes on to the future.
But they're going to die and be done too. So
But
why?
they'll become, maybe they'll achieve great things that inspire us. Maybe
then
they'll
that-
find out what happened before the Big Bang.
What does it matter
Maybe
if
they'll
they-
determine whether or not the core of Jupiter is hydrogen acting like a metal, or if it's really metal.
And why does that matter to them when they're done?
Because maybe we will discover a new source of energy that will power the whole world based on this new physics.
And why does that matter when they're done?
Because what we do is live. The meaning of life is to live and pass your genes on.
Okay, you
and
live
have
now,
more
pass your
people.
genes on, and then you die, you're done. I still don't understand why.
So why would you leave the world worse than you found it?
I mean,
That's my question. Why would you be obsessed with teaching people that humans are not causing climate change? Why would you take a book's word for it when you could discover the world for yourself?
Actually,
That's the mystery to
humans
me.
did cause climate change because we sinned against a holy God, and now we live in a sin-cursed
Okay,
universe.
so, I've spent some time in Japan last year. They don't have any tradition like that. What's wrong with them?
Actually, there are cultures all over the world that do have such traditions.
Well, but not the one I spent a lot of time with.
Some people.
And before they eat, they thank the people that created the meal because they
It's
like
interesting
people.
they even thank people. I mean, there's remnants of Christian thought all over
That's an
God's
extraordinary
word,
claim.
all over the culture. But I still want to know, when we're all done, everyone's done here, why will our conversation even matter?
If we can empower a generation of young people to make scientific discoveries, to provide clean water, reliable electricity, and access to worldwide information to everyone in the world, that will be a very good thing.
But then they die and they're all done, so why did it matter for them?
Because they will pass their genes on and become some new
But
thing.
if when you die you don't even remember you were here because you know nothing, what's the purpose of living now anyway?
See, so this is the difference between him and me. I find it extraordinary and amazing that I get to live right now, at this time in the cosmos, and be part of this amazing system we call the universe.
Guess what? I do too. I find it extraordinary. And I know that the reason I'm here is because God created people.
I have another
He
fundamental
created-
question for you.
No.
This is related. No, it's related.
No, listen.
Noah's
listen to me
Ark
and
was
tell-
Old Testament. right?
Listen to me and tell me why it's so extraordinary. Because, as the Bible says, it's so evident that there's God. I mean, you look at DNA, a language system, an information system. We never see evidence that came about by natural processes.
Well, I claim we do, so we disagree.
Can you give me an example?
Example of what?
Matter producing information. There's billions of bits, zillions of bits of information on this. So can you give me an example of?
Well,
of
her,
matter
she's a
producing-
good example.
Yeah, she's here. But how did the information arise from matter?
We don't know. So
I
I
do.
find that extraordinary and exciting and wonderful.
I
We
do.
don't
In
know.
the beginning, God
That's
created.
science.
I think I know. I think that, like, I know that it all
In,
came from God.
in the beginning,
Okay,
God
I'm
created.
open-minded but skeptical. And so here's where we have difficulty.
I have a question for you. Why do you think that, like, most living things all have, like, a nose and 2 eyes and 2 ears and 1 mouth?
Welcome to our world. This is the main idea in all of biology, my dear. This is the fundamental idea in life science. It's evolution.
Okay, so if you
So
ever
this
see-
is welcome.
Okay.
Welcome.
But can I say something?
Please.
If you've ever seen, like, paintings all by the same artist, they all look really similar, right?
I guess.
Yeah, so if we were all made by the same artist, how come we all have
Okay,
the
but
same?
what makes you say we were all made by the same artist?
Because I believe that God created us all.
Okay, so in other words, you went back to a miracle. Do you see what I mean?
Well, so,
Yeah, but how,
as much
how
of a
could
miracle
this
as a Big
how
Bang.
could this not
Okay.
be a miracle? Like, how do you
Okay,
think
well,
you
so
could understand
You
everything?
said you can't explain how
So-
matter produces information.
But for me, that's exciting. Not proof that there is an entity.
And
that-
I think it's really exciting too that you can see how great and awesome this is.
It's astonishing. So you and I are made of the same material as exploded stars. So you and I are at least one of the ways the universe knows itself.
So you're saying that the stars created us?
So for us,
How is that any more or less? I mean, how
Well,
is
to us,
being
it's-
exploded by a star more believable
Okay.
than God created me?
Don't you have?
so
Don't you have a blind faith, Bill?
no.
Because you said
No,
everything
I've
came about by
observed it.
natural
I've
processes.
observed the stars moving apart.
Have you observed stars form people?
Not yet.
But
By
have-
the way, everybody,
but
you
have
are
they?
living at a time when it's very reasonable that we will find evidence of life on Mars or evidence of life on Europa, the moon of Jupiter, with twice as much
Hey, there was
seawater as the Earth.
There was just an article the other day where they now said, I think it'll be another 1,500 years before we find
Well,
evidence.
I
of
disagree
life."
with that. I work at the Planetary Society, and we
Okay.
don't feel
But
that
they've
way.
been searching for years and they've never
What have
found
you
any
seen
evidence.
that does show that?
Say it again.
What have you seen that does like show proof?
Oh, well, so this year, last October, scientists are convinced that water flows on Mars every Martian summer. Water flows down. There's all this sub-sand ice on Mars. Everywhere we look on Earth, everywhere we look, and we find just even the little dampness, there's something alive.
But
So
do we find that
everybody-
on Mars?
So not yet. So everybody, if we were to discover evidence of life on Mars,
But we haven't.
does it has DNA?
But
Okay, one way we'll not
But-
find it, Mr. Ham, is to not look. That will guarantee us not finding it.
but it doesn't. You haven't found it though.
Not yet.
No, I just want to.
But we have very
make
reasonable
sure.
places to look.
But we
By
do
the way,
find-
the planetary science budget is about 1.6 billion.
But we do find
It's
evidence of life all over
it's
Earth, right?
9% of the NASA budget. It's less than a cup of coffee per taxpayer. Yet that's where we make these extraordinary discoveries. If we find life,
You did discover something?
not yet. That's why we want to build the next rover in 2020 to look,
They've
and the
been
one
looking.
after that in 2022.
They've been looking for
and
years,
20
haven't they, for life in outer space?
Yeah, well, the space
And if I have a question.
space exploration is only 50 years old, Mr. Ham.
And if you do find something, what is that? What would that?
What would it mean to you?
What would it mean to me?
Yeah, what does it have DNA?
I don't know.
Or not.
We would have to check, wouldn't we?
So, or would we look in a book for it?
See, they're just all speculative things.
They're
you-
fantastic things.
You know that you
They're
haven't
fantastic
found life.
things to speculate upon. Furthermore,
Why is it fantastic?
it is not, I'll tell you why. I have purchased a Martian meteorite from a guy in Colorado that collects them. When you go to Antarctica and you find rocks on top of the ice, where did the rocks come from? There are no mountains anywhere around. They came from space. They're meteorites.
Listen, I don't understand how you think that we can understand everything that's out there. Like, are us little
It's a
humans-
quest.
I
That's
know.
what's so wonderful.
I know, but
That's
you-
what's so
you-
inspiring.
You act like you have you
A process
understand
by which
everything
we can know
exactly.
the universe. Yes, we can know the cosmos and our place within
But
it.
like, why do you think that like our technology and our like evaluation of science is as developed as it's gonna get?
No.
So how do
Absolutely
you know
not.
that the stuff that you think you know now?
It's going to change. I guarantee you, everyone.
So then you're saying
There are
that you're,
things that I accept as true that are not.
that are not true.
And that doesn't bother me. That excites me.
What? How?
We're going to make discoveries.
But how does it not bother you that things you believe you know are not true?
Because we have a process by finding out the truth. When I was a kid,
I just feel
I
like
am
you're
so...
making it so difficult
No,
for
but let me
yourself.
give it... No, it's... In other words, to me, what you have is this simplistic worldview that is inconsistent with everything we observe. That's what I find troubling. But hang on, let me give you this one thought, you guys. We find Martian meteorites on the Earth because Mars was hit with an impactor right around 3 billion years ago.
Oh, stop right there for a minute.
Stuff fell into space.
Wait a minute. How do you know 3 billion years
So
ago?
let's just say it is, for now.
All right.
The same way we say there was a flood 6,000 years ago.
Oh, no,
based
it
on
wasn't 6,000 years
something.
ago, it was 4,000.
Okay,
But I have a
okay.
basis
So
that
all
I
that
have,
aside.
I have a historical record.
All that aside.
Do you have a historical record
Yes,
for
we
the
do.
3
So
billion?
you look at this
What's that
meteorite,
record? What is your
and
historical
you find
record?
evidence of the Martian atmosphere, the little bubbles in the rock. You find these shock patterns, and you find the minerals from Mars. So it is not crazy. It's extraordinary, but not crazy to suggest that Mars was hit with an impactor through what's generally called a Hohmann orbit, an orbit where it falls toward the sun but ends up on the Earth. You and I are descendants of Martians.
Okay,
That
and
is
that's
not crazy.
And that's not crazy? Is it crazy that you and I are descendants of Adam and Eve?
We are descendants from a common ancestor. I don't
But
know
is
that
it
they went by
crazy
those
that
names.
is it crazy that God made the first man and woman and we're descendants of them?
For me, there's no evidence of that.
So is that crazy?
But
I wouldn't use that word.
What would you say?
It's you're betraying your intellect. You're not using your head. That's what I would
So
say.
you're saying it is crazy?
It's frustrating.
which is more crazy though.
But
being
you're saying we're
descended
descendants
from a
of
Martian.
Martians, and that's not crazy?
I say it is not crazy. It's extraordinary, but not crazy.
Okay,
And
so-
we have a process
where
by
are the-
which we can prove that. That's
Prove-
what's so exciting.
Prove that we're Bill, I want you to do that for all these young people. Prove that we're descendants from Martians.
I can't prove that right now. I don't know
thought
where
you
you
said
were
we-
the
I-
last minute and a half.
I thought you said we
We
could.
want to send spacecraft there. We have a process by which we can make this discovery.
Okay.
And it could be on Europa. There might be something
What if
alive.
there is no discovery?
Well, that's
You don't
also
discover
extraordinary. That makes us even more unusual in the universe.
Are you prepared to take? We have a book called the Bible that says it is the Word of God who made all things. You said, here's what happened in the past. Are you prepared to take that and consider it in regard to the evidence you see in the present?
So I claim, Mr. Ham, that I spent a lot of time with it. I
Did
read
you?
it twice.
Uh-huh.
I followed the guys around on the maps. I decided that humans made the whole thing up.
Okay, so
just like this.
But are you?
I'm skeptical. Do you think? What do you say to young people when they ask you about the steel brackets? Did Noah have steel brackets?
I very
Did
well.
Did Noah have those extraordinary
Hey,
cranes?
listen, please let me answer.
Okay.
Okay. Did Noah have steel brackets? Actually, in the Bible,
Now,
within.
what do you say to young people when they ask you?
Oh yeah, I would say in the Bible tells us within 7 generations of Adam they'll work as a bronze and iron. So yeah, he very well could have had steel brackets. That's exactly true. Yep. I mean, in the Bible it actually says that about iron.
So my claim is that's absolutely not true.
And you said
if you study archaeology and anthropology, you will see the evidence for it absolutely being not true.
Okay.
Don't take
can I
my
know
word
why?
for it.
Was there no? Do you not see any sort of like metal or anything? Is
It
that
took
why?
way longer than 7 generations to get from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age
But that's
to the Iron Age.
Isn't it possible that people, for instance, how about,
So I've evaluated the evidence. It's not
okay,
possible.
how about this for a scenario?
I can't fly.
Okay,
It's
how
not
about,
possible.
How about this for a scenario?
People didn't live to be 300 years old. It's not possible.
Okay. How do you know that's not possible?
I just say, I've just seen no evidence for it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So how about this for a scenario? There's an event called the Tower of Babel. It was after the flood, sometime after the flood. People dispersed over the earth. Some people used stone tools. Some people were able to develop technology with iron. Some people built wooden houses. Some people lived in caves. And that all happened as a result of that dispersion. But we live in the present. And so when we go and see evidence of these cultures, then some people are interpreting as Stone Age to Bronze Age to Iron Age. But it's very possible that different people did different things. I mean, if you came with me, we'd live in a
So
cave
this is
because
where
I couldn't
this is
build a
where we
house.
disagree.
Okay.
I claim it's not very possible. It's absolutely impossible.
Why?
Based on the evidence that you see in archaeology, anthropology,
But if you
and
but if
nature
you
and
but if you say
geology.
it's impossible, then you're stating something absolute. So you must have
In this
all
one
evidence.
regard, yeah.
So you've got all evidence to know that that's
I
not
have
true.
more than enough evidence to know
No,
that.
do you have all evidence?
Well, that's in other words, can you prove there is a God? No, you can't.
In
It's
an
a
ulti-
philosophical question.
In an ultimate sense, I can't.
Well, let me ask you
because
another
I'm a
question.
finite being. But I can do this. I can say if there is a God, I'd see evidence of his handiwork. I'd see evidence of creation. When I look at DNA that builds life, I mean, regardless of whether they're talking about, we've all got, you know, the two eyes and the nose, we're built on DNA, and what I see is that we never see information coming from matter by itself.
Well, I claim we do.
processes.
I claim we do.
Well,
We're
give me
all
an
here.
example. Give me an example.
These people. You and
In other
me.
words, you're saying we're here, therefore natural
So here's
processes.
what I want you to think about. Here's where I believe Mr. Ham has trouble understanding nature. On my side of it, we claim the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. And to take the time to get your mind around 1 billion is very difficult, let alone 4.5 billion. And in evolution, the fundamental idea in all of biology, the basis of modern medicine.
Stop there for a minute.
Okay. So we acknowledge that it's bottom up. We as humans design buildings from the top down. We make a drawing, we harvest lumber, and we build this thing. But that's not how evolution works. Evolution works from the bottom up. As the old saying goes, nature has her bad designs eaten by her good designs. And as time goes on, over billions of years, things have changed to the point where you and I are here. So you guys, I really encourage you to take the time to understand 1 billion. If you started counting from the moment you were born, it would take you to your 31 years and a half to get to 1 billion. Day and night, no sleeping.
Okay, you've been
It's
talking
extraordinary.
You know, let me ask you a question. You said that evolution is foundational to medicine.
Yes.
So doctors, I mean, they learn anatomy, which you study in the present, and they look at all your physiology, and name one medical piece of technology that's dependent on molecules to man evolution.
Vaccines.
Well, no, wait a minute. Vaccines are developed in the present by doctors looking at organisms in the present and understanding how they react to certain...
So the key word there is understanding.
Yeah, because you're observing it. Because you can actually...
So do you distinguish between short-term evolution and long evolution?
I'm not even sure what you mean by short-term evolution.
By short-term, I mean, why do you need a different flu vaccine every year?
Yeah, because the organisms have different strains because mutations and so on, but that's not...
Mutations happen over time.
They do, but give me an example where mutation produces brand new information. I mean, when you look at resistance in bacteria, antibiotic resistance in bacteria, usually it's due to a loss of information or it's an inherited resistance. Give me an example where mutation produces a brand new piece of information that never was there before.
You and me, you and I.
That doesn't make sense.
Yes, it does. When it comes from the bottom up. The organisms that mutate favorably. We disagree on this. We disagree on the fundamental idea.
There has to be a mechanism for matter to produce. I mean,
we disagree about biology, Mr. Ham. Let's move on to some of your other extraordinary claims.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
You said that you don't really believe that anyone could have ever lived to 300 or more, but
I've seen no evidence of it.
I have just a question though. Let's say there was a lot less pollution back in the day, right? It was a lot cleaner, right?
Let's start right there. When you look at the archaeological evidence of ancient times, people's lives were much shorter. If a guy were 40 years old, skeletons of dead people.
Yeah,
people, their lifespan was much shorter.
Yeah,
not longer.
Yeah, it's not much shorter, and that's because of all our modern medicines, and also because of our eating
well, it's really
techniques
two big things.
Our diet.
Invention of farming and sanitation.
Yeah.
Without sewers,
but it's still
it'd be really hard to have a lot of
still a
people.
maximum of about 70 years. I mean, the Bible does say that people lived for hundreds of years before the flood. That's all gone. We do know that aging occurs because of when chromosomes are duplicated. There's
I read the Bible twice. I read the Bible twice. Okay. I don't remember any mention of chromosomes. So go ahead about that.
No, it doesn't. It's primarily a book of history, actually.
Okay.
That's what it primarily is, a book of history.
Not a science book.
Well, what do you mean by science? The word science means knowledge, right? Doesn't the word science mean knowledge?
It also means the process by which we know nature, which includes observation, hypothesis, creating a test, testing it, compared what you thought would happen with what happened, and then coming up with a new hypothesis.
We've been asking you about a test. Give an example where matter produces new information.
Well, I claim we're looking at it all around us. Okay. That's where we disagree.
I think that's your answer. I think that's the answer.
So there's an old saying, if you find the watch in a field, the watch had to be created. But that was top down. Somebody designed the watch.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
It's not how evolution works.
You
It's the
agreed
other
to
way.
me. You agreed to come for me to walk you through the ark.
Yeah, so go ahead, walk me
You agreed for me to come and walk you through the ark, and the first thing that you wanted to do was start on level 3, because you already had people suss it out. Where we have the teaching exhibits. You didn't want the walk through the ark. You wanted to set us
No,
up.
I'll see the ark. Well,
Okay.
Mr. Hem, you
Thanks,
make
buddy.
extraordinary claims.
Uh-huh.
So we
Well,
were.
yeah, you wanted to come up here to the 3rd deck.
Well, I was
We have our
afraid we
teaching
wouldn't get
exhibits
to it.
here,
Yeah.
where we have our. Oh, yes, we would have. I would have taken you through. That's what I offered to do for you.
So I'm more than happy to see the ark right now, Mr. Ham.
So, okay, well, let's go down here and walk through the ark there. We really need to walk from the bottom up, and that's what I wanted to do. But,
Do you want to go back to the elevator?
no, we're not going back to the elevator. We're going to go on the ramps. You don't see the ark if you get on the elevator.
But if you want to go
This
from
is
the
all
bottom
about-
up.
By the way, this is showing how ancient man was highly intelligent. You said Noah wouldn't have used cranes. How do you know Noah wouldn't have used cranes?
I don't think he had steel cranes with fossil fuel powered
You
hydraulics.
don't even need steel frames for cranes. How do you know he didn't
Well,
use
why
cranes?
did you use them then?
What's that?
Why did you use the steel cranes with fossil fuel hydraulics?
Well, we didn't say we're going to build this way Noah did, because Noah, the Bible doesn't tell us how he built the ark. We didn't even try to build it the way Noah did. We're building it, the dimensions in the Bible, using modern tools. That's what we set out to do. We've never ever claimed we built it the way Noah did.
You couldn't.
Well,
How long would it take Noah to have built this structure?
I don't know. I don't know what technology. Do you know what tools he had?
I know what tools he didn't have.
Well, he didn't have our modern tools because he didn't live in our time. But do we know what tools he had?
We have a pretty good idea, actually.
How do we have that? The whole
We
world was
look at-
destroyed by a flood.
Well, that's where we disagree. I don't see how you have trees older than the flood. I don't see how you have buildings older than the flood.
Well, then
That's
we
where
get
you
down, then
lose
we
me.
get down to how you date the tree. You keep making these statements, but
Well, they're based on evidence. That's why I make them.
Tree rings is not evidence. That's not
To me, tree rings are absolutely evidence.
it's
I've
things
never
that-
seen a tree grow faster than trees grow.
It's not evidence in the sense you're saying. It's evidence in the sense that we have facts that exist in the present. Correct? We have tree
The facts that, for example,
we have tree
the
rings
facts
in the
we
present.
exist in the present. We cut down a tree and count tree rings. The facts we have in the present is we go shopping for Christmas trees and we count the rings and we compare it to how long it took the tree to grow.
Yeah, but
We don't-
you can have multiple tree rings in a year, correct?
But be that as it may,
So then your interpretation of the age could be incorrect, correct?
no, absolutely not.
So your interpretation is 100% correct?
My interpretation with respect to the age of the Earth in this regard is absolutely correct.
we're asking
And
about
furthermore,
your-
Mr.
Wow,
Ham,
you
your
keep-
interpretation is absolutely wrong.
You keep jumping.
And so what I
absolutely.
always wonder-
So you know everything? You know all
I didn't say that. In fact,
Well, how can you
furthermore,
say I'm absolutely wrong if you
about
if you don't-
this one thing, you are absolutely wrong.
Well, we're talking about tree rings, and you
No,
just
we're
jumped
talking
to
about the age of the Earth. Yes, that's what we're talking about, the age of the Earth. This is why I'll say again.
Okay, well, I thought we were
have
talking
no
about tree
problem,
rings.
I have no problem with people's religions writ large.
How would
but
you
the
prove?
Earth is not 6,000
How would you
years
prove
old.
to all these young people here 100% absolute proof that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old?
That's quite difficult. Over 4 billion we can do.
How do you do? Okay, over 4 billion. How do you do?
Well, using potassium argon, strontium, rubidium, and the process of geology, the many processes associated
Okay,
with
so
geology.
if you're using radiometric dating techniques, I understand that. Elements at decay, radioactive elements at decay, that is true. You use those, but you have to assume things about the parent element. I mean, do you know how many of the daughter elements were there to start with? Do you know for sure the rates of change haven't stayed?
We do our best to
same?
know as closely as possible.
But it's possible those things could be different, right?
No.
It's not?
Not when you're talking about one order of magnitude. No. There's no reason to think it's
Well, actually,
not the way
our scientists have
science
done
infers it.
research to show that those things...
As I've said,
Our
your
assumptions
scientists
are-
do not impress me in any way, sir.
They don't? What about the scientist who engineered this building? He's a biblical creationist. What would you say about that?
I'm glad he learned the fundamentals of architecture and
So you can
structural
do
engineering.
that and be a biblical creationist?
Apparently.
Oh, good. We agree on something.
Yeah, apparently. But the Earth's not 6,000 years old.
The process of science, the philosophy, and the methodology. of
So,
science.
so here's the thing, Mr. Ham. Yeah, what makes you think that strontium, that rubidium doesn't become strontium? Strontium doesn't become rubidium. I mean. What makes you think that? What makes you think that it doesn't always happen as we always observe everywhere in nature? What makes you think it's possible for that not to happen?
Well, when we observe it, you know, at those decay rates, some of those decay rates, the half-lives are over multiple millions of years.
Billions in this
Okay,
case.
but you don't observe the billions. You only observe it in the present in a very short period.
So in other words, you believe, let me ask you, you can agree or disagree. You believe that there's a process by which the decay of rubidium and strontium would be not as we observe it today, that it would somehow be different in ancient times. Is
No,
that right?
I didn't say that.
I'm asking.
All I said was, you are only observing decay in a limited sense in the present. You're extrapolating backwards, and plus, when it comes to the original, conditions, you don't know everything that was there. Correct?
We know a great deal of what was there by the process of science and inference.
But you weren't there to actually.
No,
test
that's the wonderful nature of it.
All I'm trying to do is say, you're extrapolating backwards, and you do have certain assumptions, you do have certain beliefs that could be wrong.
That's the process of science.
Okay, but they could be wrong.
We have a process by which we eliminate that that turns out to be wrong. When you make such broad statements, you're almost embracing science, but you're kind of missing it. Let me ask you again. Do you believe there's a way for the radioactive decay of strontium and rubidium to somehow have been different in ancient times?
I mean, it's possible that decay rates are different than what they're interpreted to be today. It's possible decay rates change. In fact, there's evidence that decay rates change.
So here's my claim. As soon as you invoke that sort of reasoning, Mr. Ham, as soon as you invoke that, you are invoking a miracle. And that is no longer what we consider science in the mainstream. I didn't just invoke a miracle.
I mean, there are things that change on this earth just because of the laws of nature and because of...
But do you believe that the decay of strontium and rubidium changes because of the laws of nature? And can you explain the laws of nature?
Absolutely, but
that make that possible.
But can you explain the laws of nature?
No, see, for us, on
where did
my
those
side
laws
of it,
come from?
That's a wonderful question. And we believe it comes from the nature of subatomic particles, based on evidence. What's this? Hey, Mr. Ham, you should sell my book. Why don't you sell my book at your store?
Oh, these books we aren't selling. We're warning people about these books because they picture Noah's Ark as a bathtub, which it wasn't. It was like this big ship that you're in.
Made of concrete and not seaworthy.
You know what? We never built this to float. We built it. It's designed as a ship and built as a building for tourists to come through. So it actually is sitting on.
So what's the difference between that and this?
I think the size is a big difference.
These boats are too small, you mean? In these.
Explain what's the philosophy behind the exhibit? I guess I don't.
Philosophy behind this exhibit is really to say that, unfortunately, a lot of people have pictured Noah's Ark as a bathtub ark. When you take the dimensions in the Bible, it's a ship like the one that we built here.
In other words, this is too small.
It's not that it's too small, it's just unbiblical. And it is too small, but it's unbiblical. That's the whole point. The Bible's description is 300 cubits by 50 cubits by 30 cubits. Those bathtub arks are
And you've inferred the size of a cubit based on the...
everyone knows that a cubit generally is from your elbow to the tip of your fingers, and there's different cubits in history. We chose a particular cubit based on research that our researchers have done. There's different size cubits.
So this is 7 family members building a structure as big as this one?
Actually, there were 8.
8. Wasn't one of them a kid?
Well, actually, Noah and his wife had 3 sons and wives when God spoke to them. So I wouldn't say he was a kid. I'd say they were all married, just like the Bible says. See, the point is, none of us were there when Noah was alive. And a lot of people have an evolutionary view of history. They take your view of history and they say, oh, those sort of people before us weren't as good as us. They couldn't have built a great ship like this. By the way, we hired lots of contractors to help us build this. It's very possible that Noah hired contractors too. Then again, if you over a number of years have some very talented people, carpenters like the people that built this, you can build some fantastic structures. I mean, it's very, from a biblical perspective, Noah was highly intelligent. And there could have been all sorts of technology that was developed by them.
So, hi, you guys.
See, what we're trying to do, is to be able to help mums and dads be able to teach their children that they're made in the image of God, there's purpose and meaning in life, that God's Son stepped into history to die on a cross, be raised from the dead, to save them from eternity. You want to teach them that they're just animals, and when you die, you're done.
So let me ask you this.
Isn't that right?
Hang on. Let me ask you this.
But isn't that right?
Yeah, hang on. Wasn't Jesus in the New Testament?
No.
When did Jesus come along?
Oh, it's interesting. The very first verse of Genesis, in the beginning, God, the word for God is, basically you could call it a uniplural noun. It says God is one, but more than one. Let us make man in his own image.
So in other words,
when God's Son stepped into history to be Jesus Christ, the God-man, he becomes a God-man 2,000 years ago, but Jesus existed from eternity.
I see. Oh, he's quite a craftsman. And there were ancient dinosaurs.
You must admit, okay, how about saying something positive for me? You must admit, these are quite exquisite exhibits, right?
They're very troubling.
Yeah, but they're beautifully done, aren't they?
They look like a modern Amish workshop where people eschew modern technology.
Well,
I'm very skeptical.
It's not an Amish workshop.
Well, that's what it looks like. The lay of that rope.
Actually, by the way, 100.
How did people? How did people in the Middle East get bamboo?
100 Amish craftsmen built this.
Oh, there you go.
Very talented, aren't they?
But I mean, it looks very Amish.
Aren't they talented?
Yes.
You want to admit, and you know what? They trust in God, and they're able to build this phenomenal place.
So let me ask you this other big question.
Okay.
Hi, you guys.
Hey.
I've read that this place costs $100 million. Is that right? Is this the best use of $100 million?
Well,
really?
let me ask you this.
Think of all the things you could do.
Well, let me ask you this.
All the help you could provide people.
Okay, a politician using $2 billion for a political campaign. Are you prepared to say that about every person who spends money, every project in America? Are you prepared to say that about billion-dollar cruise ships? Are you just singling us out, or are you prepared to say that about everyone?
No, but you make the extraordinary claim that what you do is
No, that's
superior.
what I'm asking. I'm asking you to be consistent. You say you're questioning.
So let me ask, what's this guy? Who do we have
questioning.
Here? So we have. This looks like an Apatosaurus or something.
Yeah, it's a sauropod. Yeah.
And why are there juveniles?
Yeah, they'd be juveniles. Yeah.
And they lived on the ark. What became of them?
Well, what became of the dodo bird? Became extinct.
Well, humans killed the dodo bird. So
yeah, but
you
lots of
think
other
that humans killed these
hundreds and
organisms?
hundreds and hundreds of species of animals have become extinct, right?
Considerably more than
Actually,
hundreds.
thousands, really.
Millions. But yes, so.
I don't know about millions.
Yeah, well, we do. So what your claim is that.
I'm talking about land animals.
Let me just understand.
Land animals. No, I'm not talking about sea creatures. I'm just talking about air-dwelling.
Your claim is that a family built this enclosure for ancient sauropods.
For each kind
and
of
the sauropods disappeared.
For each kind of land. Oh, lots of animals have disappeared. I mean, that's why we have endangered
species. But it happened in the last 4,000 years.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And there's no record of it in Scripture. There's no record of it in Asia. There are no fossils of
Actually,
them.
what's interesting in Scripture, there is an animal. It's called the largest land animal God made in Job 40. And when you read the description, it actually sounds like a description of something like a sauropod.
Something like a sauropod. It's, for us on the other side, that's not enough, Mr. Mann.
Now, you believe dinosaurs evolved into birds, right?
Yes, sure.
So that's why you can't have dinosaurs living beside man.
No, furthermore, it's an interesting fun fact. The amount of time between the Stegosaurus and the catastrophe that finished off the ancient dinosaurs is more than the amount of time from the impact to humans today.
Okay, you said fun fact. Prove the fact to me.
Well, that's what we do in science.
Yeah, but prove it to all these people right here.
It's difficult to prove right here with nothing around me. However, I claim you all can go to the American Museum of Natural History in New York and see the evidence. You can go to the Smithsonian and see the evidence from my side.
You'll see dinosaur skeletons, but
not only dinosaur skeletons, but you will observe the sediment in which they are trapped.
Yeah, but you never saw them trapped.
Absolutely not.
Right. Okay. That's all we really think.
When you look at the sediment around ancient dinosaur bones, you will find where potassium and argon have chemically replaced calcium. And then you can infer how long ago that lava solidified.
Well, you know what's interesting? There's been a lot of work done to show when, in New Zealand, for instance, are examples, and we've got documentation of this, that when lava comes out onto the Earth's surface and it's dated using potassium argon, it dates to millions of years old because they found argon from the mantle comes up and makes it look old. So in other words...
Well, what you have to do is compare the ratios, Mr. Ham, with the chemical replacement of the argon, calcium, and potassium. You're not just making this stuff up. They're very diligent about it.
Yeah, but my point is...
This never happened, just so we're clear.
See,
Go ahead, lead on.
Bill, one of the things is you don't want to listen to answers. You just keep making
I've heard your answers. I've read your books.
You keep making statements and then you ask questions and then you go on. You won't listen.
I'm listening. Your claim, as I understand it just now, is that potassium-argon dating does not indicate that ancient dinosaurs are 60 or 150 million years old.
Well, potassium-argon dating, like all dating methods, are based on a series of assumptions that are fallible.
Which we call science. Go ahead.
Assumptions, fallible assumptions are science.
Fallible assumptions. Yeah. My claim is that the potassium-argon dating that you will come across at the American Museum of Natural History or the Smithsonian is not fallible.
You know, they use potassium-argon dating on the actually lava dome that was produced at Mount St. Helens. And as you know, that was produced after it erupted in May 18th, 1980.
I was there, actually.
Right. So when they use potassium-argon dating on the lava dome, it doesn't date to just, 20 years old or
because it came from the middle of the Earth. You have to wait for the chemical replacement of calcium and potassium and argon. And, sir, really, you're cherry-picking a couple facts from a sentence.
You're cherry-picking. In other words, when the lava solidifies, then the rock should be 0 years old, right?
No.
Okay, all right.
No.
So
the rock is ancient. It's from below the Earth's crust. All due respect, what you just said is not right.
So then you've got a problem because when you see that lava, it's already got argon, potassium there. You don't know how long.
We work very hard to figure out how long ago it happened. That's the business of science.
Tell them how you know how it happened.
So you look at many, many rocks. You look at a lot of argon and a lot of potassium and a lot of calcium, and you infer how long it takes rocks to cool and how long it takes for the chemicals to replace. Okay. And then you shine X-rays through them and look at the crystals. It takes great diligence.
Okay, you infer.
You figure out. Would you prefer that term? You figure out how long ago.
But you're making assumptions doing that. It could be wrong, right?
Your word assumption is my word evidence, I think. Mr. Ham, we just disagree about this at an extraordinary level.
You know why? Because there's a clash of worldviews, because we have a different starting point. Your starting point is everything happens by natural processes, evolution is fact. My starting point is God's word is true. And I'm saying when I start with God's word, I can explain why DNA is an information system and a language system. I can explain why there are fossils over the earth. I can explain why there are flood legend cultures all over the world, because the Bible's history that makes sense of that. Your history, it's not history, your belief about the past doesn't make sense of that. It doesn't make sense of DNA, doesn't make sense of where humans came from, doesn't make sense of the fossil record.
I claim it does.
Okay.
To an extraordinary degree. So everybody understand, in the process of science, as soon as you work backwards and introduce a miracle, a miraculous event, then it's no longer science. It's another type of worldview.
And then I want everyone to understand that when you go backwards and say everything happened by natural processes, that's Bill's religion. His religion is there's no God, the Bible's not true, and everything happened by natural processes. He has a religion, I have a religion. His is based on blind faith, mine is not. because when you start with God's word, it makes sense of the world that we see, and we can use observational science to confirm it.
So what's the difference between science and observational science?
Well, again, the word science, it comes from the Latin scientia, correct?
Yeah.
And it means to know.
Let's change it to the process of science.
No, it means to know.
What's the difference between the process of science and observational science?
Define science?
Define science as a process by which we make discoveries about nature.
Okay, so science as a process, okay, you can use the word science in regard to that. What about when you're talking about knowledge about the past?
Knowledge about the past.
Okay, so that's science.
Absolutely.
So the Bible is a science textbook because it's a textbook of historical
I would not
science.
in absolutely no way consider the Bible a science textbook.
It's a book of history, right? So it's historical science.
See, that's a word I've never heard before.
It's knowledge about the
So I
past.
met you, I never heard the expression historical science.
I'm glad I could bring it to your attention.
So there's a difference between observational science and historical science.
Oh, absolutely. Because using your five senses in the present, you can build a great ship like this. But using your five senses in the present, you can't prove we came from Martians.
I will someday, I hope, be able to prove whether or not life is on Mars. It's not exactly the same question.
You know what's interesting? When the Human Genome Project mapped the human genome, they said there's only one race of people. You know what that confirms? The Bible. Because we all go back to Adam and Eve, we're all one race.
So I don't think it confirms the Bible. It just makes the Bible consistent with nature on this one point.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad we agree on that.
Yeah.
I'm glad we
consistent with nature on this one thing.
It is consistent, yeah.
So, yeah.
It is. But your evolutionary view, would you say there were different races that evolved at different times?
No.
So there's only one race?
Only one race of humans. People run this test all the time, Mr. Ham.
So...
No, Mr. Ham,
when
if
do-
a
when do-
Norwegian,
when- when
if
do
an
we-
Australian
when-
has sex with an Australian has sex with a person from China, all you get is a human. You don't get any new thing.
So how in history did an ape-like ancestor give rise to humans? Where did we become human? And
Welcome to our world. We struggle with this question all the time. 100,000 years ago, 150,000 years ago, a million years ago,
so
million and a half,
So if we become
75,000 years
human,
ago.
are we different to the animals?
Yes, you can run this test too.
Yeah, so we're different.
Yeah.
So is it possible that humans were created separately by God and we didn't evolve from...
I've seen no evidence for that.
Okay,
There's no evidence.
So you don't know when we evolved from...
We work very hard to try to figure it out.
Okay, but so you're assuming we did evolve from some ape-like ancestor?
Absolutely. The evidence is overwhelming.
What evidence?
The evidence that there are so many animals, remains of animals that are almost human. Not quite. So many remains of animals that are almost primates. It's a spectrum, a transition. It's just fantastic. It's wonderful. It's an amazing discovery.
I don't know. Okay, I'm perplexed because you said before we don't know. Was it 100,000? We don't.
But it wasn't a billion.
Well, you don't have.
And it wasn't. It wasn't 4,000.
So you don't have all these supposed transitions that you could just show all these young people?
We have the supposed transitions. Yeah.
So we do know when we came from ape-like ancestors?
People argue about this very diligently. Furthermore, by the way, everybody, through the process of science, I guarantee you there will be changes. Pluto was considered a planet. Now people think Pluto isn't really of a different origin. Doesn't orbit in the same plane, so we change the definition. Science changes. That's the fundamental thing, everybody. Science changes.
So your views you have today could be wrong?
Absolutely.
Well, if you could be wrong,
but
you see...
Here's where we differ. Being wrong by less than 1% is not the same as being wrong by 100%.
So we're wrong by 100%?
You're wrong by 100%.
So you must have 100% of knowledge to know I'm wrong by 100%?
Absolutely. I have 100% knowledge that your worldview is wrong. Okay. That I've got.
All right. I don't know anyone else who would claim they know 100% of everything. I just don't know.
Not 100% of everything. 100% of this claim. Your
100%
claim.
that claim. But you have to know 100% of everything to know that claim is true.
Absolutely not true.
You said absolutely. That's 100%.
So it's not true. You do not have to know 100% of everything to know that the Earth is not 6,000 years old.
Okay,
that's not a criterion.
So if you don't know 100%,
that's bad philosophy.
If you don't know 100%, then you could be wrong, though.
I follow what you're saying, but I'm not wrong about the age of the Earth not being 6,000 years old. I am not wrong about that one thing.
How do you know for sure?
Because I've looked at the evidence. I'll tell you what else. The sun will rise tomorrow. I can't prove it. You can't prove that the sun will rise tomorrow. So you're not going to count on it? You're going to presume the sun won't rise tomorrow? I think you will count on the sun rising tomorrow. Won't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you can't prove it.
I'm just interested.
You can't prove it right now.
No, you can't prove it. But you know what? If I'm in the present, like I was this morning, and saw the sun, I watched it.
Good.
Did you see ape-like creatures turn into people?
No, it happened too long ago.
Okay. That's the point.
So here's where we disagree. My understanding is you believe that if you didn't see it, it didn't happen, or you couldn't prove that it happened.
Well,
I believe that if you have the system of evidence, you can show beyond a reasonable doubt.
If you're not here in the present with your five senses, and you're talking about something in the past when you weren't there, or no human was there.
Titanic sank. I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, but there were people that were. There are historical records. Actually, we have a historical record called the Bible. God's always been there, and He has recorded for us who we are.
So we have historical records also on my side of it. Number of neutrons in water.
I've never dug up a historical record about billions of years. I mean, you make interpretations, but where's it written down?
It's not. So everybody, the reason we believe the Earth is 4.5 billion years old is based on looking very carefully at rocks. And yes, it's not written in English on the rock how old I am as a rock, but it is written in scientific sense. And you don't have to take my word for it, you all. You all can go to universities, you all can take geology courses, and you can learn this for yourself.
Hey, I took geology courses. I never saw
That's part of the mystery.
I never saw the age written in the rock.
Well, you didn't take enough geology, I guess.
Well, I just didn't see a label on it.
It's not a label, but it almost is.
You know, in the Bible, in the time of Joshua, it says the sun stopped in the sky.
Why would it do that? Well, there's no evidence.
Yeah, but that was a miracle of God. Is the Bible is the Bible scientifically wrong in saying the sun could stop, or?
Looks to me as absolutely wrong. That one literal claim. So a couple things, everybody. As soon as you go back and invoke a miracle, the sun stopped in the sky because of a miracle. That's not science.
In other words, your arbitrary definition of science is...
I don't claim it's arbitrary.
The supernatural has nothing to do with it.
Supernatural has nothing to do with it.
Okay, that's your definition.
Pretty much.
Okay, but why should I accept your definition?
Because we have so much evidence for it. Why should I accept your definition? Yeah, I know. Furthermore, let me ask you this. You've ever heard you're Australian. You know this expression, separation between church and state?
It's not in the Constitution.
Where is it?
Well, it was in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to Danbury Church to talk about the fact that that they were not going to have a state church like it was in England to impose beliefs on people.
So we have that here in the United States. We celebrate that.
Actually, in the United States right now, the government is imposing beliefs through the education system that we came about by natural processes, so that's really their religion. That's the religion of the state. And they're using my tax dollars to do it, by the way.
So we claim that science.
What science?
That the process that we teach in science class.
Okay. So your definition of science, that you can't have the supernatural, is what they've adopted in the public education system, correct?
Well, it's what science, conventional mainstream science.
But who decided that definition? Who decided the supernatural?
It's a process.
Who decided the supernatural has nothing to do with it?
It's a process.
Who decided the supernatural has nothing?
Thousands, millions of people over the last few centuries, since the Enlightenment.
They said that the supernatural has nothing to do
So
with
that science does not have the supernatural.
So it's people who decided that definition.
Absolutely.
So it's an arbitrary definition.
I wouldn't use the word arbitrary. It's a very carefully thought through philosophical process.
I say it's not very carefully thought through, because if you disallow the supernatural, then you're assuming you know everything.
No, I disagree with that. I claim we don't know everything, and that's wonderful and empowering.
Okay.
I claim you say you know everything.
If you don't know everything, right, you agree with that, you don't know everything.
Absolutely.
Would you allow someone to teach the possibility that God created them in the public schools?
No, not in science class.
Mm-hmm.
In religion class, is history class, philosophy class, but it's not science.
But you said your belief was everything happened by natural processes, then they're teaching that religion in the science class.
Well, you're calling it a religion.
Yeah, it
We're
is.
calling it the process of science.
No, but it is a religion.
So you can teach.
It's a belief.
Teach your worldview in a different class, but not in science class.
But what you're saying is your worldview you want taught in the public education system.
In science class.
Okay, but my worldview you won't allow.
Not in science class.
Okay, so why you're not allowing it because you've decided there's no supernatural.
Not in science class. Science is everything that is not the supernatural.
Okay,
let's call it not supernatural class.
But that's your
Would you
definition.
prefer that?
Okay, not supernatural class. So in other words, you want to eliminate the supernatural, and you want these young people to believe we came about by natural processes, and when you die, you're done, but it's great being alive, and hey, there's purpose and meaning while you're alive, and think what you're passing on to the next generation, and when they're done, they won't even know that they were here, and hey, isn't this great? You're all going to be done.
It is great.
Okay. Well, hey, can I show you something in here? That's great. Wow. No wonder young people have problems with purpose and meaning and turn to drugs and sex and suicide. Why would it be wrong for a young person to say, I'm going to be done, won't know I'm here anyway, why don't I kill myself? Would it be?
People do that all the time.
And that's okay?
No.
Why?
Because we want people to be productive and happy.
Yeah, but if they're going to be done and won't remember, what's wrong with them saying?
Because life has great meaning for us on my side.
While you're here.
Yes.
But what about when you
We don't know what's going to happen.
Can I show you something in here?
So you guys know James Randi? $1 million, and he carries the check with him for any paranormal effect that he cannot reproduce. He's a magician. He's 86. No one's ever collected the $1 million. Never. Psychics, people who believe they can find water under the ground.
Let me show you something.
No one's ever gotten the money.
Can I show you something?
Not yet, thanks.
Hey, Mr. Knight, can I quick tell you something?
Yeah.
Well, so we're obviously not quite as old or smart as you.
You might be smarter than I am. I don't know how smart you are.
But there's nothing that we can say that can convince you, but I just want to let you know that we all prayed for you as a youth group.
And we all thank you for talking to us today.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Ham.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope that someday you get out of this area and visit the American Museum of Natural History.
I'm sure they
Maybe the
visited
London
secular
Museum.
museums. Have you visited secular
I
museums?
really encourage you to take.
And we're actually 14 hours from home to see this museum today.
Yeah.
So.
Where'd you come from?
Iowa.
Northwest.
Can I ask you guys a question? There are secular museums all across America that would portray Bill's view. And we have one creation museum, we have one ark like this. Do you think it's great that Christians can actually give their view like this?
I think it's amazing.
So let me ask you this. To me, Christians came along in the New Testament, but the flood's from the Old Testament, right? Is that not? Do I not have that?
No, that's correct.
Well, the word Christian wasn't invented until...
So why
The
aren't
flood is
Jewish
just part
people
of history.
Christians?
It's just part of the biblical history.
So why are Jewish people
I
not
tell you
Christians?
what, I've heard your history, right? Your evolutionary history. Will you give me just a couple of minutes to share ours?
Yes, we walk along, yeah.
So, even though you don't believe it is, we do believe the Bible is God's word.
I see no evidence for it.
Okay, that's fine. And God says He created everything in 6 days. He created man and woman in the image of God, which is why we can speak to each other. It's why, and the fact that He created is why we have the laws of nature and the laws of logic, because they didn't come about by natural processes.
Give me this one thing now. This creature doesn't exist right now, right? And the claim is that this creature and this creature and these people lived at the same time.
I know your belief is they
No,
don't.
but also, fundamentally, these people look to me like Northern Europeans, like Norwegians or Scandinavians. But people from the Middle East, their facial features aren't like that today.
Well, see, we don't know what Adam and Eve actually originally looked like.
So that would be historical science.
Oh, yeah. Of course, I admit
you
that.
weren't there to see what they look like, so
Exactly.
you're inferring those facial
Yep,
features.
exactly. Just like you infer your particular beliefs. And mine do come from a written source. It comes from the Bible.
Mine come from the evidence in
From a
nature.
record that claims to be from the God who created us all. Okay? Even though you don't believe that, it claims over 3,000 times to be the Word of God.
3,000 times in the book, the same book.
Oh, yeah, it says this is the Word of God. Yeah. And it says God created a perfect world and man is in perfect marriage.
So in the perfect world, All of these creatures were vegetarians.
That's correct.
There was no predation.
That's correct.
There were no ecosystems as we know them today.
Well, there are different ecosystems.
I see. Everybody
Those
depended
ecosystems
on
are-
plants.
Yes, plants and fruits.
So
Genesis 1:29
your
and 30.
claim, just literally, is that there were stegosauruses, brontosaurus or Apatosaurus, this mammal, this other mammal with these big fangs, and this cat with a lynx-like cat with the fangs all coexisted, and they were all vegetarian.
Yeah, there's lots of animals today that have sharp teeth that are vegetarian too, as you know. And
They don't look quite like this.
That God made the first marriage. No, they don't look quite like this. And you know why? Because God says God made kinds. Since Noah's Ark, when the kinds came off the Ark, we've had a lot of speciation within a kind. See, that's why you were wrong when you said all the species couldn't fit in the Ark, because species, again, kingdom, farm, class, order, family, genus, species is man-made classification system. And the Bible uses the Hebrew word min, which means kind, and we would say kind, from the research we've done, is more akin to the family level classification. You know, dogs, a lot of research done. You can show all these species of dogs, you can connect them all, and obviously the dog family is probably the kind level. And so here you need 2 dogs on the ark, not the different species.
So we're very skeptical of that on the outside.
Oh, you can be skeptical, that's fine. But what we're
Just
saying
on the
is,
outside, there isn't enough time.
Actually, you know what? One of our scientists, Dr. Nathaniel Jensen, who you said was incompetent as a PhD from Harvard University, he's actually done a lot of work on genetics and shows we actually can have speciation occurring very rapidly. Would you be prepared for me to send you one of his papers? So
I've read his papers.
Oh, and so you just don't believe them, right?
Well, I think he's got it wrong. He cherry picks. So I'm sure he's got it wrong.
So
I'm not a full-time geneticist, but I can certainly see that he's got it wrong.
Okay, let me ask you this question. If we're just an animal...
Just an animal? What's better than being an animal?
Okay.
It's marvelous. As animals, we're able to understand the cosmos and our place within it. It's worth celebrating.
Okay.
What do you mean, just an animal?
So we came from animals, right? We're not made in the image of God.
I don't know. I've never met him or her.
Okay. So
I've looked.
We actually have a zoo, and we have some animals in the zoo. Now, none of them wear clothes, and you do. Well, I'm pleased you do, by the way. I'm really pleased you do. None of them wear clothes. Why do humans wear clothes?
To keep warm, protect ourselves from the sun.
Okay.